Well, hello. Hello, welcome to our top 3 games to play on Halloween.
So our criteria, the way we put this list together, is we wanted games that had really strong theme to them, that kind of made you feel like you were living the horror in some respect.
Stuff that's easy to teach. You know, you're having a Halloween party, you're inviting some people over to play games. There's probably gonna be 2 or 3 people who don't necessarily play a lot of games.
And our third criteria was that they fit a good number of people, because we're thinking maybe you're having some people over for Halloween and you want to have a big group of people and you want everybody included in one fun game. So with that, we're going to have 3 games and a runner-up. You want to hit the runner-up?
Cool, yeah, runner-up is a personal favorite of mine. We got Fearsome Floors. This is a game that allows for 7 players, which is a plus, and it's easy to teach. It's the easiest to teach game we're going to talk about today. In fact, I would say if you have children, this is your #1 pick. Like, ignore everything else we say. If you're playing with kids, this is the game to get to play on Halloween. It's super easy to teach. It's not boring if you're an adult. However, this game is a complete turnoff if you're the type of gamer who needs games to be like fair and strategic. This isn't about that at all.
There's some strategy involved, but it is more about kind of chaotic fun. Basically, you're all little characters running from a monster that's trying to kill you. And it's really cutesy. It's more of a kind of like Scooby-Doo style of horror. It's a fun game, it's a blast. We always laugh a lot.
Yeah, everybody's always laughing. It's got a lot of the great tropes in there. You know, you've got your gang of nerds and the Addams Family type guys, and you're just trying to get them out of this mansion that has a monster in it, and he's trying to eat you. It's similar to Robo Rally, actually, if you've ever played that. But kind of backwards, where you're trying to guess what the random programmed movements of the monster is.
The only reason that it's not in our top 3 list proper is that it's not scary. It's fun, it's silly, it's like Scooby-Doo.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, it does a really good job of that kind of thing, but we kind of stuck to games that could make you feel fear a little bit more.
If not fear, paranoia, or some sort of negative emotion. But we still, you know, recommend it if you have kids, if you have a group of people who are literally not into board games at all, and their idea of game night is Monopoly. This would be a great way to sneak a gateway game in to a group of people who are not normally ready for it, because this is a really light but super fun, goofy game.
All right, and now our #3 pick for best kind of Halloween spooky game is Betrayal at House on the Hill. Betrayal at House on the Hill is a game that does a good job of replicating kind of a haunted house or any movie where you're stuck. It's a group of people stuck overnight in like a mansion for some dumb reason.
How does it do that?
It does that with kind of a fun mechanic where it starts out as a completely cooperative game. Everyone is sort of exploring the mansion together. It has tiles that you lay and explore different rooms. And then at some point during the game, the haunt happens. And there's a scenario book with 50 different scenarios that are all sorts of crazy, zany things, ghosts, werewolves, voodoo, whatever. And usually one person, sometimes it's nobody in the whole group has to fight, but usually one person basically turns into the haunt, where somebody gets possessed, or somebody becomes a werewolf, or somebody's a vampire. And then you're all playing against that one person.
Yeah, it's really neat, actually. My favorite genre of horror movie is the genre of horror movie where nothing interesting happens for the first like half of the movie. I really love that like tension of like, I know something bad's gonna happen because I'm watching a horror movie, but I'm just like watching people eat breakfast. And this simulates that part of the horror movie in a weird way, which is a strange thing for a board game to tackle, but it totally does. And then when things blow up, it turns into this hilarious, crazy scenario. We could tell you like specific stories of things that have happened with our group, but this is a game with spoilers, sort of like Risk Legacy, and it's best to sort of not know the specifics of how things go down. It does have one hang-up, though.
Yeah, it can be broken. It is a game that's people's main complaint, is that it's a little bit broken, and that's totally correct. It is. There are times where the haunt is that person's far overpowered, or times when they're far underpowered, which I guess is the nature of making 50 different scenarios. So if you're looking for a game with like pure strategy, it's probably going to frustrate you, but we love playing it. The important part of this game is that it replicates the feeling of being in that kind of movie, and that's what it does. It's fun, it's silly, lots of funny, weird stuff happens. So if that bothers you, probably stay away from this one.
Yeah, if you want a game like that, that is a little more in depth, you might look at Mansions of Madness. It didn't make our list. We don't own a copy, but it has like a dungeon master and is a little more dungeon crawly and has like a few more rules and is a little more defined, but it's a very similar game. So you might look into that. And another reason this kind of lands at number 3 and isn't higher on the list is that if you're playing with completely new people or some gateway people, you're having a party with some friends over, when the haunt happens, if one of the people ends up being a traitor and that person is somebody who doesn't normally play games, now what they have to do is go into another room and memorize 1 page of rule books. When we have done it in the past, it has not been a problem, but for a certain type of personality, they just look at it and zone out. Even though it's actually quite simple when you read it, it's never that complicated. For most people, it's not going to be a problem, but there's a certain type of person that they see that and then the game ends.
Yeah, your friend that's on his cell phone the entire game and every time it's his turn goes like, oh, okay, what do I do? If he gets the haunt, like normally in a cooperative game, that's fine, you can just have that dead weight, but if he gets the haunt, then it ruins the game for everybody because he's not going to play that character well. But really fun game, really silly game. It's our number 3.
Yep. Where's number 2? What's number 2? Oh, burst out of my stomach! It's City of Horror.
City of Horror is the game that replicates the zombie genre better than, I'm gonna say, any other zombie game.
He said it, folks.
There's a billion zombie games, they're constantly coming out. Almost all of them focus on, you know, running from hordes of zombies or
killing zombies.
And that's
headshots.
Fine. You know, Zombicide or Zombies, whatever, that where you're running around killing zombies, that's fun, and that if you want to do that. But if you want to feel the fear and tension that is in the zombie genre of movie, this game does it.
The mechanics are actually pretty simple. Basic outline of the game is every round you got one of your characters has to run from one place to another. Everybody plays those choices simultaneously. So you don't know where anybody else is going. There's going to be situations where you're going to run somewhere that you thought had a slot open and that spot's going to get filled and there's going to be no room in that location for you, so you're going to get shoved out into the streets. Meanwhile, if there's too many zombies outside, they're going to gobble you up, and then it's like, what do we do? You have to vote. You have to vote on who gets ate, and that's where it really starts to feel like a zombie movie. So it has this feeling where it sort of feels cooperative sometimes, but then a lot of the time, suddenly you're like cutting deals and like turning on each other and doing really awful things to your friends because you need to survive. You can't win if your guy dies. Your guys are literally what the points are in the game. And that's really neat. That's something that horror movies, I mean, I feel like get wrong about zombies. Horror board games get wrong about zombies. Horror video games get wrong about zombies because it's hard to simulate. And it's something that board games are better at simulating than a lot of other mediums. And it really gets that like that tension of like when man turns on each other is the scary part, not the zombies.
Yeah. There's tons of table talk and bargaining in this game. You're constantly basically trying to convince all the other players why it's important that they keep you there, because if they vote to like throw you out into the streets, you won't necessarily die because you might have enough bullets to kill the zombies or whatever, or a Molotov cocktail. And those resources are very rare. So you might not necessarily die, but it's gonna be tough. And then if you don't die, you're gonna remember who did that to you and you're not gonna help them in the future. So it's this really interesting game of bargaining and deal making for that's pretty much the entire game.
Also, like Fearsome Floors, it deals with the tropes in pretty clever ways. There's a lady who screams a lot. And her special ability is you put a ball, and that she draws zombies to her, but if you put a ball gag in her mouth, she doesn't scream and it doesn't draw the zombies anymore. You know, little kids are worth more points. The lady who's pregnant gets 2 votes whenever you're voting about who lives and who dies. There's an old man and he doesn't get a vote because he can't hear. It's really neat, it's really thematic, and it really hits that zombie movie feel. So if you have a group of friends who like playing games, it's intimidating, it seems hard, but it's actually quite simple, and it's a game that you can really capture that feel. So if you have a group of friends who love like Walking Dead, the TV show, or something, but don't really play board games, this might be the one to do.
And now our number 1 game for Halloween. Oh, spooky! Big budget effects here, guys. Big budget effects. Is Werewolf. Werewolf is a fantastic game. There's almost not a limit to the number of players. You can totally play it with 14 or 15 people. I wouldn't go over probably 18. But it's a very simple game that is entirely table talk. It is exclusively table talk, where basically the basic mechanics are, there are, in a group of like 10 people, 2 people are werewolves, and you're given a card that says if you're a villager or a werewolf or a couple other things. And if you're a werewolf, you're secretly trying to kill everyone.
It's a game that was actually invented by, I think, a Russian professor of psychology if you've played Mafia, it's the same game. And it's a game where you're trying to deduce who amongst you is a traitor. That immediately breeds paranoia in people for kind of hysterically no reason. Suddenly everybody around you seems like they're acting suspicious even though they're not.
Right.
Suddenly people seem like they're lying even though they're telling the truth. It's just a weird thing the human brain does. There's a lot of packaged versions of the game. There's Ultimate Werewolf, which is super popular here in our hands. We have the Werewolves of Miller's Hollow. But you don't need those.
Yeah, we would never recommend making a game for yourself that someone came up with to sell or something like that. But this game was made up and it's totally like free to, like, you know, that's why there's so many versions, because it's free to produce. Yeah, it's nice. They're nice. If you want them, totally get them. They're nice artwork and stuff. But you can totally, if you go on like the Wikipedia page for the game or Google it, has all the rules. All you need is a pen and paper, which is fantastic. It's a game that you can totally just spring on people at a party if it's quiet.
Yeah, it actually weirdly works better with non-gamers because of that. Like when you just like tear up some pieces of paper and put it in a cup, they're like, okay, this isn't nerdy. I don't see any like polyhedral dice around.
Yeah, it's a party game. We can whatever. And it plays on that paranoia. It does have player elimination, because if you get basically eaten by the werewolves at night, or the villager votes on who they think is a werewolf and that person gets lynched, you're out of the game. We don't ever have a problem with that in our group because it's a lot of fun to watch your friends lie to each other.
Yeah. You finally realize what a miserable, like, awful person your best friend is when you play this game, or how deceitful and terrible your wife is, or how little you trust, you know, your boss. And these things, they come out in really fun, goofy ways, but it also makes you feel panicked in a weird way. I have screamed at my friends playing this game in a good-natured way, but it came from a place of horror.
You get so panicked when somebody goes, he's a werewolf. And then everybody starts going, yeah, he voted for this person last round, and you're not a werewolf, and you're freaking out because you're like, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to go against it. Or when you are a werewolf, and it's so gleeful to like, you're panicked the whole time because you're afraid of being found out, but it's so much fun to just secretly sit there.
One time our producer, Kellen, and another friend of ours were both werewolves, and I was the narrator, and it was fascinating watch them accuse each other and scream at each other to convince the whole room that there was no way these two guys were colluding with each other. And it turned into this thing where one of them had to make it to the end, because if one thing was certain, it was that those two dudes were not working together. If one was the werewolf, the other was not. And it worked perfectly. They killed everyone. Yeah. And that's really fun. It's really neat. It's super easy to teach. It's the easiest to teach game we've talked about tonight in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It allows for a ton of people. I've heard of games with like up to like 64 people playing Werewolf. I mean, it makes you feel those feelings. But anyways, Werewolf is our ¡1 pick. It's a blast.
Yeah. So, thanks for tuning in. That's our top 3 Halloween games, or games to play on Halloween.
Real quick, be sure to check out, I saw you try to hit pause. Stop.
Everyone just tuned out.
Right. But for real, hold on, don't close it. Watch our Halloween special. It's coming out on Halloween. It is the craziest episode of Bored with Life we've ever done. Hopefully you guys like it, because it has been an insane amount of work. The logistics of this thing are nuts. It's about the board game Fireball Island, which is a cult classic. If you've never played it, don't worry. We do a much better job of explaining it than we have done with other games in the past.
And we spend a much longer time playing it. It's a supersized episode. It's like over 20 minutes long. So make sure you tune in on Halloween, or maybe you're having fun on Halloween like a normal human, or playing one of these games, then tune in soon after Halloween, because we're pretty proud of it. It's pretty zany.
It's gonna be a blast.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks.